Good evening. I'm happy to start anew with Gen Attitude, and we are going to explore further with one of my friends and my colleagues, Houssem, who comes from Tunisia.
I'm not hearing you.
For some reason, I can hear myself. Oh, so okay, so um, we're gonna start again, and I am happy to receive tonight and talk with one of my friends who comes from Tunisia. His name is Houssem. Houssem from Tunisian startups. But I will salute Houssem, and I'll ask him to introduce himself better than I can introduce him. Hi, Houssem.
Okay.
How are you?
Hello. I'm fine. You?
I'm doing fine, just very fine.
Yeah.
I like summer, so
Yeah.
finally we are close to summer.
Yeah.
Tell
So
me a little
thanks for
bit,
having me.
tell me a little bit about Tunisian startups and what do you do in Tunisian startups?
Okay. So I'm gonna start by introducing myself. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm also an advisor and a board member in several non-for-profit initiatives. I have a digital transformation consulting company called Interactive, and mostly one of my most important hats is being a board member and head of international partnerships for NGO called Tunisian Startups. So Tunisian Startup has been created in late 2016. We are like the umbrella of the startup ecosystem in Tunisia.
Interesting. How did it all start? Why did you start Tunisian startups? And who was on board of Tunisian startups? And what is your real mission? What do you do there? And tell me about your NGO.
Yeah, so in late 2015, early 2016, the Ministry of ICT has started to draft a bill for startups called Startup Act. And right after that, there's been a change in the government. And so the ministry has continued to work on it. There was a task force inside the ministry started to work on it. But we have figured it out that there is no entity grouping people who are part of who are actually the stakeholders of the startup community in Tunisia. So there was a group of people who knew already each other. So they have started this organization, and later we have started evangelizing to the startup community. So now we are more than 400 startups across the country, but also we have ambassadors who are abroad, especially between Europe and America. So we mainly work, actually, one of our most important tasks the last couple of years were to evangelize this law, Startup Act, to the ecosystem. I mean, the business networks, to the medias, to the investors, the classic investors who invest in speculative industries and so on, to the banks. And after that, I mean, the most important work was to actually pitch the law to the politicians. So in
You
March,
started a little. So you've started
yeah,
a little talking about the startup, the ecosystem itself in
yeah,
Tunisia.
yeah,
Can you tell me how it evolved? Because we need to understand a little bit about the economy, talking especially from the
yeah.
perspective of young economies, as Moldovan economy is like not older than 30 years. Can you tell me a little bit about the dynamics in the Tunisian startup uh, ecosystem at the time of having this initiative in 2016, you were saying?
Yeah. So right before that, we have many successful Tunisian startups who have actually incorporated abroad. not in Tunisia. And they open the offices here in Tunisia to hire mostly Tunisians who work here. Why do they incorporate abroad? Because they have many incentives. Because as maybe Europe or the United States or Canada or Asia, they are more attractive as destination for billing to clients, for partnerships, and even to raise money. In Tunisia, it's very hard to do it because the venture capital landscape is not that developed. I mean, for last year, we had about 40 deals totaling about less than $7 million. So that's nothing, absolutely nothing. That's even a round of one startup in the United States, maybe. So right before that, so they open outside, but they work mainly here. So we have actually decided to say, okay, what's the main problem? We actually figured out that there's been many problems, not just in the trade framework, but legally and fiscally, and there was even psychological barriers. People are actually afraid to open the companies here because we have such a conservative financial regime. So I would say, okay, as an entrepreneur, I'm going to have my own problems. I don't want to have further problems to deal with. So they go open outside and they like outsource their activities to their subsidiary here. With this startup pact, I'm going to continue actually with the dynamics. We host almost every month events each time. It's not just for another networking event because we have plenty of them. Like each week there are many of them across the country, but we choose a very specific theme related to startups and their verticals, and we bring in speakers who are actually experts in their field, like financial technology, AR, VR, green tech, but also we talk about other kinds of matters that we don't easily find every day, such as data protection, the latest promulgation or ratification of the European law RGPD, and so on.
So you're
Be-
addressing the pain points of the government, right?
yeah, yeah, and and far beyond this, well, besides the events, we have actually partnered with the most important stakeholders of the not just say startup ecosystem, but mainly the entrepreneurial ecosystem, such as API, which is the one-stop shop to create a company here in Tunisia. No matter what you are creating, you gotta go there to launch it, to make it legally effective. We have partnered also with a foundation, which is part of a bank, which works on fostering the startup community here. We have partnered also with many others, foundations and NGOs and even companies. So
So
we have, yeah, and just last one, we wanted actually to measure what the startup community is doing. So we have created and launched on March 27th a platform called tsindex.org, which is platform a crowdsourcing platform actually where actually people can come, they can put their data, say who they are, where they live, what do they work, and what actually are the main problems that they are facing, whether they are bureaucratic or related to something else. So we have already released our first report about a couple of months ago. Yeah.
So basically, you're trying to gather data from independent entrepreneurs that face certain struggles according to their territorial identification. And
Yeah.
basically, you have released a report on that, trying to emphasize on the issue that they need to handle while being there.
Yeah, yeah. So the main goal is to measure and track the impact of startups in the country because it was before the acting of the law, but also we want to measure what's going to happen later after the ratification of the law. So it's still open to everyone. Anyone can go anytime and change his data to find what's going on really.
So basically, you have started working by first gathering the data about the law and the law enforcement with regard to entrepreneurship in different parts of the country. Let's talk a little bit about, because when we are talking about governments, we need to understand we have a centralized government that kind of everything, all the apportionments of the taxes go directly to the state budget and then they are distributed to local public administration. So let's say 90%, like the majority, because we have local taxes as well, and approximately 20% stay there.
Yeah,
Is it the
so actually, about taxations, our financial law for the last couple of years, they have created more incentives to companies. So, say you can have up to 4 years without imposition. So you just pay the monthly taxation, but by the end of the year, you you don't pay the 25% of taxation. But if you are beyond 4 years of existence after creation, you pay 25% of the benefits, the net benefits, and also 5% on the distribution of the dividends. In some areas, in some regions that we call regions of encouragements, which are actually the interior regions. So these places, they are like totally disconnected from what's going on in the coastal regions, which where there is the main economic cities besides the capital, including the capital. So they are mainly relying on agriculture and manufacturing. So since 30% of the national investments go every year to these regions and 70% go to the coastal cities, the government decides to say, okay, we're going to make more incentives for these people. So we check like the ID, which is the internet, the direct foreign investments. They are investing more in these regions to encourage to create more jobs, to create more manufacturers, and so on.
So basically, as I understand right now, the government, the national government is the one deciding how much money from the taxation amount goes to the local governments, right?
Okay, so there is actually a huge transition between both of these. Actually, two transitions. There was the frameworks before the revolution, before 2011, where actually the parliament was just a one-man party. So it's just the president was dictator for 23 years, deciding whatever happens in the country. And there is from 2011 to April 2018, where we had uh, seven governments and where we had actually two legislative elections, each
Mhm.
have their own majority. So, in about 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago, this is when we have actually started to have the local governments because they were not as local as they sound. They were still relying on the centralizing system of the
Mhm.
government. But now, as we call them the local collectivities, which stand actually for local governments. So now they can have their own budgets. They can decide of what they deem important to the advancement, to the growth of the local gross product of the state they're part of. And we have actually 24 states in Tunisia. Yeah. So
Mhm.
starting from 3 weeks ago, this law has been effective, and last week we held our first municipal elections, where people
Uh,
actually voted, and for
Please repeat
people who
because I
got,
lost you for a couple of seconds there. So basically, you stopped it telling us about the 24 states that you
yeah,
have in Tunisia
yeah,
and how they have changed. So
yeah,
please,
and about, yeah,
we use the conversation.
yeah. So I said that about 3 weeks ago we had a new law for the local governments to have more independence from the centralizing system from the government to create their own incentives locally and to work on them, the taxation, so on. And last week we held our first ever municipal elections where people actually went to vote for their representatives in their respective municipal councils. So starting from the next month, we are about to expect maybe start to figure out what's going to happen and measure actually if there's gonna be like primary small scale impact on the on a very local
On the
scale
changes.
actually. Yeah, yeah, because there's been many programs has been created years ago, but they could not pass because of all of these sudden, numerous, endless requests to change so many things. So they didn't really have the independence that they wanted, but right now they got what they wished for. So hopefully we're gonna witness some change.
If you talk about, let's leave a little bit about the data, about your perception of what it does the Tunisian ecosystem needs to evolve, to develop, and to have a more constructive entrepreneurial culture, mindset,
Mm. Yeah.
and more companies that are going to scale from Tunisian and attract investment in different regions of Tunisia, not only in Tunis. So, what would be the steps that you think that your country should take?
Yeah. So first, it's all about the culture shift. So, or maybe the mindset shift. So, this is one also of the main goals that we have started to work on and we start to apply via the events we're doing by evangelizing what is the startup culture, how to work, because we're like very, very classic ways to do business essentially as a small economy. Competitiveness is very high, and most of people actually rely on the relations, on personal relations. So it's like, hello, I'm going to create a company or to do this. Do you know someone who's going to build my website? Do you know someone? So it's actually based mainly on recommendation. So you can spend tens of money on advertising and so on, but getting a referral or recommendation, personal recommendation from one of your clients or friends is actually going to put you on the top. So we're talking mainly about meritocracy and other stuff, but um, we have decided that talking about this in the medias is not actually going to make like sudden change in the brains of people. So we are now about to launch our academy, Startup Academy. We have worked and still working, and we'll keep working with incubators, accelerators, because they are people who go to mentoring programs such as Impact and Bloom Masters, but they don't actually know how to behave, how to do, what's the process of launching the company, what is the right mindset to adopt to build a startup. So we take from our time to, and we bring also these startup veterans who live maybe abroad and come here, or maybe the ones who are still living here. We give from our time and go to do it as voluntary work. And we go have these people, we tell them our stories, we tell them how to behave, how to think, what is the real hustle, and they are building apps, how to acquire users, how to make shift in the product, how to pivot, and so on. And last but not least, we are actually considering getting into the academic side of the country. So we're still discussing with some people. We still haven't decided yet on which program we're gonna start, but hopefully we're gonna start from the university, as this is where people have actually more, a little bit more mature than they are in high school, and this is where they have start to make harder decision for themselves what they're going to study, because they have already maybe decided on which field they want to work in later in their career. So we're still working with some universities on it. So hopefully we're gonna launch program maybe. I'm not the one taking part in it, so I cannot give further details about this. But this is how actually we start shifting the mindset on classic business and startup mindset.
I know that many countries are looking into starting shifting the culture and the mindset, taking with even elementary schools, because I think it's when the kids are forming their ways of dealing emotionally, and it's where we take our decisions, emotionally connecting with the world, and
Yeah.
emotionally connecting with our decisions and how we can perceive our future. So basically, changing that perception that someone is going to prepare something for you and going to have a job prepared for you, I think, from my personal opinion, is it's a very very important shift in mindset.
Yeah.
So, I think starting with university is really good, and starting with academia is really good. And one of the one of I know when we talk about entrepreneurial culture, it's very very difficult to diagnose it, because it's qualitative data. You cannot really measure perceptions, right? But still, I want to ask you about the perception about entrepreneurship, starting with family environment, going to into the academia, and starting with schools. How entrepreneurship is perceived in Tunisia?
Yeah, so first, just want to react very quickly on the last question. So we already have programs in school about it. It's called enterprise culture. We have also have an optional subject for 3 years where people can create their own subject, sorry, their own project, whatever it's gonna be. But why we have started with the university? Because actually it's a very urgent need, as we have a talent exodus in Tunisia. So talented people straight from university, they go and live outside. They go follow their master's degree in Europe or Canada or whenever they want, and they go settle there, never go back. So this is on the short term and midterm that I started working on, because we're not the one who are supposed actually to start drafting the law on, or maybe new programs for elementary or primary school, because this is very urgent right now. For like the last 5 years, we had 94,000 engineers who have left the country. So it's huge. Almost 100,000 people leaving, maybe 25,000 per year. That's huge. So this to reply to very to an actual question about hello,
Yeah, I'm losing you. I keep on losing you.
hello. Do you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes. So you were saying 90,000 people of, sorry, it's connection.
Yeah, now I hear you. Yeah, 94,000.
People, and
94,000.
we lost you completely for a little bit out of that, and I know that you are talking, so I'd like you to talk further on the topic and in schools and everything. So
Yeah, so this is it. Actually, this is an actual problem that we want to find a solution to. So this is why we are actually started with the people who are actually entrepreneurs, or maybe even who are unemployed, but also on university programs, because these people on very short term, maybe like 1 or 2 years, they're going to start companies. And actually, we have people who already study at university and have their own startups. Some of them still have it as a side hustle, but also personally, I know 2 or 3 people who have actually left their studies. They have dropped out just to focus on the growth of their startups.
yeah, we don't want to make any types of incentives, so we
Yeah,
don't get in trouble with the academians there.
yeah,
But if we talk about your priorities, as meaning the Tunisian startups priorities for 2018. I know you have worked a little bit on the Startup Act. So what are your priorities for 2018, 2019, and 20 to improve the ecosystem, the national ecosystem, because that's where you work with?
yeah. So for the startup act, we were dozens of people working on it. So it's not just Tunisian startups, but
Mm-hmm.
even people from the government, and actually the government itself has started the project, and we gathered ourselves and under one umbrella and kept pushing it and worked on it with them. We still have people from private sector and other civil society actors. Startup I was a long battle, but we won it. Now we're still waiting for the upcoming days for the application decrees to make it effective. We are still actually going
You mean
to,
by the applications, the law enforcement, the mechanism of implementation of the policy,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yes,
So
yes,
to make
yeah,
it, I just want to
yeah,
straighten it out. Okay,
yeah. So
so that
hopefully it's
is
gonna
the
be in the
responsibility.
next days.
So that is going to be the responsibility of which organization?
No, of the government actually, yeah,
Of the central government, right? Through the Ministry of
yeah, yeah,
Economy.
yeah, yeah. The Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy, because
Okay.
digital economy is a part. Yeah.
Okay. So it's
So
so basically we need to understand how are they going to involve the not-for-profits and the professional associations in the
no, actually,
process
we
of
were involved in it. We are
no,
involved
no,
in
no.
it.
I mean in the process of enforcement.
Yeah, we are involved in it. We'll be part of the committees of the enforcement of this law. So it's actually a long-term work. So our work was not going to be limited to just the acting of the law, but it has just started because we're going to be of the committee inside the ministry and the task force, and we'll be continuing our work. For the priority for now, we're going to work harder on evangelizing more the startup act for the people, to evangelizing for the investors and for the banks and for more venture capital firms, not in Tunisia because they have actually worked with us on it, but actually those who work on regional and international scale, maybe on Africa or the MENA region, Mediterranean Sea, or even worldwide, that we want to attract them and invest in Tunisian companies. We're also going to still looking for international partnerships for partners who are going to add more value to Tunisia as a hub, tech hub. We're not just going to focus on the main capital, Tunis, as the main tech hub, but also we are ourselves pushing more people who are in the regions to become our ambassadors and actually contribute to creating local tech hubs. Um, we're also working on ambassadors program worldwide. There's a list of people that we're gonna work with, and they're going to be our ambassadors in their respective startup hubs. Later, we're gonna, of course, continue with the work of the events, the thematic events, networking events, and why not host maybe next year international startup festival. Last week we had our own ambassador in Smart Africa, which is intergovernmental summit to make of Africa a smart continent. And we have one of our
Smart
members
is in
have
terms of
signed.
what means
Yeah,
smart is in
Africa as a
terms of
smart.
public administration, right?
Yeah.
Așa dire legătura.
Hello.
Hello, finally you're back.
Yeah. So it's all about the digital transformation of the African continent. So
Mm-hmm.
smart countries and smart continent, creating smart continent. So we're gonna host in 2019 the World Startup Festival.
What is the World Startup Festival?
Uh, it's actually a festival for startups worldwide. I cannot give like now more details on it since we're still working on the main program. But mainly it's gonna be just like mostly on the rest of the startup program because in Africa mainly we don't have like the event for startups. People know TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco, New York, or London. They know maybe Startup Istanbul in Turkey. They know Startup Fest in the Netherlands, MENA ICT Forum in Jordan, Slush also in Finland. So there is nothing big. There is nothing dedicated to Africa. So yeah, we're gonna make something for us, made in Africa.
Okay. So what do you think are their verticals, so the industries that Africa can focus on and attract interest from the investors, from the international investors? I was talking to one of my fellow colleagues and they were saying, oh, but Tunisia is so close to Europe that it's almost like not African country. So I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. So it's, I should take it as a compliment or I should take it as a hmm. So basically, you are very open to or very exposed to European culture that creates a challenge and also an opportunity in itself. And what do you think are going to be the verticals that Africa can focus on? So it's going to be interesting for the world to come and to participate in such an event.
Yeah, so two things. First one, I'm gonna take on a national level, and then on the continental level.
Mm-hmm.
On the first national level, 85%, actually 86% of Tunisia's economy is relying on Europe.
Okay.
So as we are close to Europe, we also have adopted actually their lifestyle, and almost everything here is like Occidental, like Western lifestyle with Eastern values. So both in our identity, we have like mixed values in our own identity. So people are more open-minded and more exposed to what's happening to Europe and America and so on. As a vast majority of our economy relies on Europe, uh, we are an outsourcing economy. So for several reasons, so as you know, just like big economies go to other ones to outsource their activities there because it costs less because people could be actually uh, more qualified than other similar countries to do it, the proximity and so on. For example, for Tunisia, in the last index of the famous magazine Bloomberg, we are in terms of innovation, Tunisia is number one in Africa and the Middle East North Africa region, and we are the 43rd worldwide.
In terms
So,
of what type of innovation?
innovation, it's very
Product
broad. And then later,
model, product
it
innovation, business model innovation.
it's it's innovation broad because later the report goes deeper in other subfields, fields and subfields and activities.
Okay.
Yeah. So as we have been for several decades as an outsourcing economy, just taking orders from the other country. Now we're still working on becoming an innovation economy. So it's not just come and manufacture and outsource their products here, but we also want to create our own and sell made in Tunisia products. On the continental level, you asked about what Africa can actually focus on. There is a story about the two men selling shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So the first man, he went to a new place, let's call it Africa, and he didn't actually find anyone wearing shoes. So he called his wife, say, "Honey, I'm coming back home very soon because there is absolutely nothing to do here. I'm gonna work very hard and spend a lot of money to convince people to wear shoes." So he went back home, and the second man he came in and he said he found nobody wearing shoes. Said, "Okay, this is where my opportunity is. My opportunity is other people's bias." So people are still thinking that Africa still need like aids and donations and so on. But yeah, it's true. Somewhere it's true. There are many places with refugee camps and still need a lot of money. They cannot even have electricity. They don't have roads. They don't have food. They have absolutely nothing. But for other countries, for example, China is the biggest investor in the whole continent. So when you come, I usually tell my foreign friends, if you cannot go to China, come to Africa and you will find the Chinese. So they come often here. Yeah, they're earning like billions of dollars in contracts, infrastructure contracts. There's so many things to do in terms of importations. For most of countries go to West Africa or North Africa, you will find that uh, among the top three importers of their economy is actually China, and still the Americans and other places there they're still reluctant on if they should actually invest in Africa or not. But actually, these Chinese are doing it heavily. They're investing here heavily. So there's so many things that people can do here. Let's not forget that among the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, there is clean energy, renewable energy, and actually the sole continent on Earth, which has actually the largest desert in the world, is actually Africa. We have the least country, which is North Africa, where actually people call us like you say Europeans because we have rain and so on. We have springs and autumns, but they don't have it. And we have 290 days of sun per year. So for the rest of them, there is very huge potential to for electricity to create and even export renewable energy. But this is what we're doing actually in Tunisia. There are foreign companies who come here and to exploit the photovoltaic electricity, and they export it back to Europe. So many things like logistics, Africa has the youngest population in the world.
Exactly. I
So
think
then, yeah,
one of the things that we were discussing with one of my colleagues in a project, in a program that I worked. So basically, in most of the European countries, the struggle is how to raise uh, the number of newborns per family. So, and they were focusing on how to diminish. And I was like, okay, this is absolutely two issues differently. So we need to think different paradigms absolutely on how to think on the issue. I don't remember exactly what was the country that was talking that too many kids are born per family. In Europe, it's going like 1 to 1 child and even less born per family. So we
yeah,
are closely approaching to my next question. So entrepreneurship plays a very important social function and demographic function. How do you see it? How do you see those functions fulfilled in Tunisia? What are the social and cultural functions that are fulfilled by entrepreneurship in Tunisia? And how do people approach entrepreneurship socially?
you mean social entrepreneurship, or how is entrepreneurship perceived in society?
It's how entrepreneurship is perceived in society and what values does society, your society, Tunisian society, believes generally it creates for the society and for the culture within the country.
Yeah, so on 10 million people, we have about 170,000 entrepreneurs, which are actually the legally declared the official number about 3 years ago. Sorry, 2 years ago. Um, so it's a very small ratio, like 1.7% of the population are entrepreneurs. When you go to South,
1.7%, right?
yeah, 1.7%. Yeah, so
So
10 million,
basically,
170.
on 1.7%, it's two creating jobs for other people, right? For
Yeah.
100 other
Uh,
people.
Yeah. Most of people actually work in the private sector. So about 4 million people work in the private sector and about 700,000 for the public one. Um, say, um, how is entrepreneurship perceived? So when you call someone here entrepreneur, it's not just having a company like as maybe the definition of being an entrepreneur differs from one place to another, but we have people who here who just call someone who is entrepreneur in the spirit. So you find people like maybe in school or high school or university or even who are unemployed say just go do something to earn your pocket money. So you
Okay.
can find people doing absolutely anything which comes to your mind just to have some pocket money and still remember a few things that we did. I can just remember first time we had internet, we had quite only a few people at high school who had internet. And then we were like selling movies and DVDs to our friends who did not have it. So this is something that the economic situation teaches you. So it's society that teaches you to go find a way to make a living. Uh, it's
So
not
it's
something that you
encouragement.
learn at school. Sorry?
It's like for us in my culture, for example, my dad would say, "You don't need to earn money because I know I can support you financially through your school, through your students. If you want to just have fun, just go and earn some money or something like that." So it was more like, "Oh, I'm a father. I can support you financially," and I wasn't very encouraged
Yeah.
in terms of culturally in a family. It was more like It's a man's pride to support for their families, so the kids are not supposed to look for additional ways of earning money.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean for sure, like small nuclear family, they always support their children, of course. It's happening just pretty much elsewhere, but people still have this mindset to like pay themselves like extra beers or extra cigarettes or to go out and something. So people always try to find ways. It's very, very small scale and very short term. So just try to do something, find someone who wants to sell his cell phone and get like $20 commission on it just because you want to go out with that girl next week. So
It's your problem.
uh, yeah, if your like parents cannot afford to give you more money, so you just have to figure it out by yourself. There is like people who come from family of entrepreneurs, especially self-made entrepreneurs. Um, they in the summer they don't like really go enjoy holidays like everyone. I mean, they can actually do it. They can go travel the world, do whatever they want. But I know few people when we were studying, even until now, their father tell them no, go to work. So they go to work from the morning to the night to learn how the business is working and so on. So I would say um, the biggest companies here and the most sustainable ones are family owned businesses. So it's very scarce to find companies who have opened up their capital to outsiders, to outside investors. And as I told you in the beginning, we have we have that culture of recommendation and personal referrals. So I
Trust.
just hope
So
you get the
basically,
point.
of
Yeah,
trust. So basically, you if you trust someone, uh,
yeah,
then you will invest in time.
yeah,
Then you will invest
yeah,
the finances and the funding and so on,
yeah,
which is not bad, but still it creates kind of a block in
yeah,
innovation. If we
yeah,
talk in
yeah,
innovative,
definitely.
progressive enterprises.
Yeah, definitely. And if you go I would go further with you on this. If you go maybe to other African countries, it's pretty much the same. It's still relying on personal recommendation. I mean, they just don't believe in like a website and e-commerce and something. In just a few countries, some entrepreneurs are really working hard to adopt this, but mainly people are still relying on this.
Which
Uh,
is
I mean,
which one
w-
type of thinking, which is not necessarily bad, which is a
yeah,
collective
yeah.
thinking, and it's very different from the landscape, from the American landscape, or the European. In most of the countries, they have the very individualistic thinking.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not like really providing opportunities to everyone if you focus on this. So people go just from certain cities, they know each other and just work together. So you as an outsider who come from another local ecosystem, I would say you're not gonna enjoy the same opportunities as the other, even if you have improved that you can provide another value to what you're doing. So people just want to stuck with the people they're working with just because of this personal recommendation thing. And there you feel like sometimes there is like this resistance to change. So I said on continental level, go to Africa, it's pretty much also the same. It's even more than this, more than we do have here. I think that to unleash the potential of the African economy, uh, African countries first need to work with each other because most of what they import they come from Europe with foreign currency and so on. It increases inflation and whatsoever. It's very long process to talk about. like intra-trade in Africa. We are not cooperating with each other. We have so many things to do together that we're not actually doing together. So I guess that the first thing to do is to work on logistics. About a few weeks ago, there's been inauguration of the longest trade road in Africa, which goes from Tunisia to, I guess, Lagos, Nigeria, 9,000 kilometers of road. So it's just the beginning. There is 2 months ago, um, the African Union made a summit on what we call the free trade area. In French, it's called ZLEC, Zone de Libre-Échange
Hmm.
Africaine.
The,
So
the
yeah,
free
it's a free, yeah,
exchange area.
yeah, it's a free trade area for uh, 46 or 47 out of 54 African countries have signed it up for it, and more are going to sign up for it, hopefully in the next month, to make a free trade zone between each other. So, yeah, just hope that things go better. We have actually also the African passport because as Africans, we have difficulty to travel to each other. Like we don't have embassies in each other's countries. We don't have enough diplomatic relations, neither economic relations. Um, so
Among
the
the countries
African,
themselves, right?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, like for Tunisia, we have dozens of embassies worldwide, but we only have seven in Africa, seven or eight in Africa. So we still have more than 47 or 46 other countries to have embassies in. So there is the this African passport where 1 billion Africans who are eligible to have passport can actually travel to the 54 countries freely without visa, without restrictions, and so on. And there's been like a pilot step where only chief of governments, diplomats, and businessmen have this passport, and hopefully they are going to release it to the rest of African citizens.
Okay. I think I never actually realized how disconnected were the states, the African states among each other. So basically,
Yeah,
because a tendency for regional integration of these countries. Basically, you can see the Latin American countries, they have this connection. So basically, they can travel pretty much freely amongst each other.
yeah,
Uh, of course, there are regions with conflicts, like in like
yeah,
the world, and so basically, they're kind of obstructed from this possibility of actually having this free trade
yeah,
negotiations going to each other countries. So I think that's a very important aspect to talk about. If we go to Startup Act, let's talk about Startup Act because we don't have that much time anymore. But
yeah.
let's talk about the Startup Act a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about the structure and what does it intend to do? How does it want to change the startup ecosystem in the country? And for how long it was uh, developed, and how long is it going to take more to enforce it,
Yeah.
for people to be educated and to learn about its possibilities so they can access certain benefits that come with the law itself. Let's start with with the history.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. So the Startup Act officially started on February 2016, but
Yeah.
unofficially a few months before inside the ministry and so on. There's been several rounds of discussions, negotiations. It started on governmental level, but later there's been independent people coming from pretty much everywhere. But there's been also people coming from the civil society, including us, Tunisian startups, as one of the stakeholders. There's been people from the private sector, such as the Federation of Employers, people coming from banks, from venture capital firms, and even people coming from abroad, with whom we did actually some benchmark. So people who live in advanced startup hubs who came and um, even actually individually as personal title, just giving feedback and giving saying what kind of articles could actually be improved and so on. Um, the
Okay.
it passed
May I ask?
twice in the government. First time it has been rejected, literally, in the governmental governmental council. And later after that, it has been accepted after we worked harder on it, pushed it further. Um, a later state in the parliament were actually thinking that it's going to be maybe acted maybe by the end of the year, even though we have passed it as an emergency law. So we were in a very critical time. We thought that it's not going to pass anytime soon because we had the local collectivities law, which is on which actually is going to be based the municipal elections. So we had 1 month and a half to do it, and everyone was
Mm-hmm.
saying no, the municipal elections, they are on national level. They are more important than this. So the date is set. It has been actually postponed several times. We're not going to delay it again. And even though it has been that hard, our law has passed before the municipal elections, and no single deputy has voted against it. No one. So all
Which
the
is not
deputies,
good. Which is not
which
good.
which is amazing actually, which is amazing. No deputy said no, and that was a very historic moment in our lives. We stayed in the panel for about 8 hours or 9 hours witnessing this historic moment and so on. So now, as I told you earlier, we're still waiting for the application decree, which is about the implementation process and the committees and so on, which are actually going to be effective in the next days, hopefully. Um, what's the Startup Act? So it's a law dedicated to startups. Most people say, why do we have a law for startups? Why just can't a normal legal and fiscal company become a startup and can actually later be differentiated from a classic business just by its business model and its structure and how it works, its product, and so on. So instead of um, changing several laws at the same time, which have been regulating the trade framework and the national economy of the country for several decades. I would say even some of them come from the before the independence, some after the independence, some come from the 70s and 80s and 90s. It was very difficult to change all these laws altogether, and I would say even impossible at the time. So we said, okay, we're gonna make a tweak and create a new law. So we went from the startup mindset actually, and we said we're going to create and act a minimum viable law, just like startups create minimum viable product. And we said, okay, we're just gonna act it on whatever our needs are, like right now, and we're gonna work hard to push it to gain the support of people and politicians, media, and so on. And later, uh, we're gonna see what's going to work or not. So yeah, we have acted it, and with this TS index and other tools that we're gonna have in future, we're gonna track and measure what's the impact of this law on the economy. So we went from the mindset of um, passing a law and change it later could be easier than actually fighting a whole existing system. So basically, this is the tweak that we spent 2 years working on.
So the whole art was simplifying things. So basically, you go and simplify things, and you go and take the lean approach towards
Yeah,
quality hacking, and just start with the minimum and basically build up.
yeah, 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 definitely. So I would say hacking the system is easier than changing it completely. So just make this tweak, hack it, and hopefully we're confident in the impact it's gonna make in the next years. And among the benefits of this startup act is that it's going to give more say more incentives than actually other kinds of businesses. Say, for example, you need a label, startup label,
Mhm.
which is actually attributed from a committee, which is going to be acted actually in the next days. So you just need to fulfill like five criterias. And other ones, like the most important ones, you have to have disruptive business model, innovative, scalable business model. You cannot be like a consulting business, so on. You need to have like one product or maybe a product which has many services which have a high potential of scalability, the team behind it, and many other criterias. So you need to have you can have an annual leave of absence. So say if you work in a company you want to launch startup, but you are too afraid. Maybe you have family and the and you are maybe like afraid of launching a company. It doesn't work. Then you cannot come back to your work. So it became actually just like military service. You can take a gap year, leave of absence to launch your own startup, and then you can come back to your initial job that you have left.
So basically, is it for public servants or
You
only?
can, even as a public servant, either public or private servant, you can do it.
But doesn't this obstruct to the rights of the company owners to actually have a reliable candidate for the positions that they have? So
It,
basically, I understand that it gives certain permits and certain possibilities to innovation and to job and
this
to
is just for the co-founder of the company, not someone who works on the company and goes to work for a startup. You, as a co-founder, you can actually co-found a company even if you are public servant. You can take a gap year. You will be replaced by whatever the administration is going to put the framework dedicated to it. But you can take a gap year, and then after that, even if it works or not, should actually even you renew it or just drop definitively from your job and continue your startup, or either way, the opposite way.
okay, interesting.
So yeah, because we have a very critical economic conjuncture right here. So 64% of our GDP is in debt. We have monthly growing inflation. Uh, our economy is stagnating, so people are being like more reluctant in launching new companies. So they are kind of afraid to launch companies. So we gotta provide some kind of these incentives to them. Um, yeah. So with this label, uh, you can have say more credits to with the bank, but also the approval of central bank to use more money, maybe exchange more money in foreign currency. Why this? Because first, Tunisian dinar is not a convertible currency, and our financial regime is very conservative. So there is a limit on the number of number of transactions that you make abroad. So, say you want to send 20 euros to France, you need very long bureaucratic process to do it. You need to fill forms and you need to the approval of the central bank just to buy to pay for your account at Google Play Store to publish an app, which is could be even for free. So with this label, you can actually do it. Um, Many other incentives gives more credibility even for venture capital firms who are here who cannot actually make a difference between the startup and other classic businesses because they have spent all their existence investing in classic industries and stock exchange markets and maybe bank bonds and speculative markets such as real estate and other fields. So, Startup Act is not the main vision of our country, but it's the critical element and a very essential component of our national strategy called Startup Tunisia, which includes other tabs from it, just like Startup City and the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy, and many, many other things, uh, whose aim goal is to become a startup nation. So yeah, so right now, like last week, there is African Vest, which is the largest fund in Tunisia, managing over $1 billion, and it says they have decided to invest actually in startups. So they are creating a new $120 million funds dedicated to startups in Africa, and the fund will be based for sure here in Tunisia. So yeah, there's been many people who have like promised before to create programs and investment funds for Tunisia, but they were too afraid to create it because in certain fields that they were investing in, there's no, they had some kind of guarantee. So it's very ironic as venture capital is the total opposite of a guarantee. It's not supposed to have such guarantees as banks are actually expecting. So for startups, they had absolutely no guarantee on it. Even the government or the law could not actually protect them, just like other countries in the US. So it's high risk, high reward. You put money, if you bet on the right team, the right product, the right company, you can maybe have a very big return investment, just like you're gonna lose it all. So here it's a little bit special, small country. People do not like really believe in this. They just believe in facts. Just have to invest in something which has been proven before. So there's also another fund of funds of 100 million euros called Anava, and many other incentives taking place here in Tunisia. Hopefully, many of them will be effective very soon. Some of them have already started, and others are in the process.
So you have a lot of work ahead of you, and as you start, you
Yeah.
just it's gonna get more and more complicated for hopefully in a good way, and hopefully it's going to help and support this liberalization of the whole investment system and financial system, so you can actually have more possibilities of innovating in terms of financial models and revenue models for the companies that would like to scale up from Tunisia. Because I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
all the struggles that is obviously in Algeria and obviously, as I understood, in Tunisia. So we should be closing because we've talked more than 1 hour. Of course, we had
Yeah.
some difficulties with internet, which is
Yeah,
which is okay, which wasn't that bad.
yeah,
What
it's
do
good.
you want to say at the end of this discussion? What would you want to emphasize on, and what would be your perspectives and call to actions
About what? About
about
Tunisia
what
startup,
you do,
about
about what
Tunisia.
you're interested in? It's
Okay, of
you want to promote the Tunisian startup
course.
ecosystem. You want to promote Tunisians to support. Also, you want people to learn about Tunisia more and about how they can invest and what fields maybe they want to invest in. I don't know. It's up to you. You choose your own message that you want to leave for other ecosystem players that are interested in Tunisia or want to learn from you.
Yeah, so we're gonna make it very short and go to the point. We are
Okay.
open to anyone willing to gain value. So we are open to partnerships from any country or any hub or any big company willing actually to push further our economy and help us become startup nations. So, as many other small countries made the example, the experiment before, and we have actually learned from them, we can as well become a big economy even with our small size. So, we're working hard on it. We are still here. We did not leave, as many have already done, and we just hope that we don't really wish it to become easy. We know it's full of challenges. We have passed actually the one of the most pressing ones, and our job has just started. So we're getting more and more excited about what's coming next. So
Well, Sam, good
keep you
luck to you.
posted about the Startup Festival, and I hope to see you here soon.
Good luck to you, Houssem, and thank you. Thank you for your participation, getting involved in this type of knowledge sharing, but also experience sharing, because it's very, very important that we feel about
Yeah,
different ecosystems and we learn from each other by actually sharing our perspectives on their development. And we were really happy to host you in Moldova.
yeah,
And
yeah, that
you
was amazing.
again in an international environment or somewhere else in this world. So
Yeah,
nice talking to you.
yeah, you best Moldova. I just hope to come back there. Yeah, really liked it. Yeah, and thanks for having me. And it was a pleasure to share my time and knowledge with you. Hope to